Welcome everyone to the latest edition of EdScoop's Education Technology webinar series, sponsored today by Metalogix. I'm your host, Corinne Lesh, reporter for EdScoop. And today we're taking a look at migrating school data to the cloud. And joining us today are a couple of veteran education IT leaders who've tackled some of these issues and have agreed to share some of the key lessons they've learned. I'm pleased to welcome first Donna Williamson, Technology Director for Mountain Brook Schools in Jefferson County, Alabama. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you.
And also joining us today is Gary Adams, Director of Technology for Palisades School District in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the program, Gary.
Thank you.
And I also want to welcome our audience, including those joining us live today, as well as those tuning into the archived on-demand edition of this program. And I'd also like to thank Metalogix for sponsoring our program today. Before we begin, I'd like to help our audience get familiar with our console and how they can participate. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any questions for our presenters during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer as many of these during the live webcast as we can, either during their presentations or towards the end of the program. A copy of today's slide deck will be available in the resource list widget that looks like a green folder at the bottom of your screen. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. Finally, an on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 1 day after the webcast for up to 90 days. It can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. So if you have colleagues who might benefit from today's presentations, share your link with them. So let's get started.
Well, welcome to the webinar. My name is Donna Williamson, and I'm the Technology Director at Mountain Brook Schools, a suburb outside of Birmingham, Alabama. And Mountain Brook Schools started embracing cloud computing about 5 years ago. And I think it's important to understand that in our school district, instruction drives our technologies. The technologies that are available do not drive our instruction. And some of those instructional strategies include student portfolios. It includes e-days. We've been doing e-days for about 5 years, and so obviously doing online learning in lieu of making up days from inclement weather certainly enhances the need for doing cloud computing. We do online assessments. We have online textbooks, and we also have online learning objects that the students can access. We also do flipped instruction, and we also do online video. One of the things that we feel very strongly about is that we want all the time, everywhere access for our students. And to do that, we had to embrace cloud computing. We have Chromebooks, we have iPads, we have laptops. So all of those types of devices needed to be able to access the content. In addition, we found that by going to Google Apps for Education and Microsoft Office 365, our students had access to those productivity tools, again, from anywhere at any time. Cloud storage was another huge issue that helped us to determine the need for cloud computing. As our students do more and more media-rich projects, we simply could not keep up with the demand for online storage, or on-site storage, and when they saved those projects on-site, they were unable to access them from home. So the cloud storage became more and more important to us as we made our decision. Of course, this all leads to the fact that cloud computing basically solved a problem. It increased our operating efficiency and agility. It lowered our operating costs, and it eliminated many of the tasks that take up so much time of our IT staff. It also saved us a tremendous amount of money. We all know that updates take our IT staff a tremendous amount of time. It has to be done in a timely fashion. needed to be done after hours, which often meant overtime. And as we used resources that were in the cloud, those updates were being done for us and be done after hours. So that was huge for us. And then a neighboring school system in Tuscaloosa suffered tremendous damage from a tornado several years ago. And so that led to the need for disaster recovery. And if you're going to have good disaster recovery, your data has to be stored off-site. So all in all, cloud computing basically just solved a lot of problems for us. Of course, when you move to the cloud, we had immediate concerns. One was data privacy. We wanted to make sure that as our students were operating in the cloud, that we could protect our data and we could protect our students from themselves and from others in the form of cyberbullying. So this presented a concern, but it was certainly a concern that we could address. Obviously, data privacy has just reached a new level across the country. It is on all of our minds, and data breaches are on our minds. And how do we keep our learning environment safe, secure, consistent, and how can we help our community to trust that we will make good judgment or use good judgment and keep their student data private? This led us to develop our data governance policy and our data governance committee. And this was a process that has literally taken us about 2 years to think through what needed to be included in the policy and also how to manage all of the things that we said that we were going to do. So that led to needing a very strong data governance committee. Our data governance policy outlines exactly how operational and instructional technologies or activity will be carried out to make sure that our data is accurate, accessible, consistent, and protected. The other thing that's very important is to establish who is responsible for information under the various circumstances. And of course, we follow all state and national laws. We've done quite a bit over the last 2 years to make sure that the data that we have in the cloud is protected. One of the things that we've made sure that we did was to have all of our staff fill out a form and list all of the apps and applications online that they use and help to research those applications and make sure that we help them to determine what data is acceptable to enter into those programs. We're also undergoing an extensive training program for all of our staff. And that's just been a real eye-opener to us to realize that whereas we've studied this extensively, many of our staff were fairly unaware of some of the pitfalls that can happen when you use cloud computing. This is a list of the applications currently that we have posted on our website, and we believe that transparency leads to trust. And if you click on any of the applications that you see, and this is just a snapshot, it tells you right there if that company has a data governance policy, if they have signed on to the Student Data Privacy Pledge, what data is acceptable to enter into the program, or what data has been accepted or entered into the program. And you'll also see that some of them say incomplete. That means that these packages are in use and have been reviewed. The IT staff just hasn't had a chance to actually add all of the information. And one of the things that really is helpful here is that we do online registration with our parents, and during that process, we ask them, or we explain to them first and foremost what FERPA means, what information we consider directory information, and then we ask if we can act as an agent for their child with our online resources. They can then click on a link and see the online resources that we are referring to. One of the other things that has really helped us save time is to develop partnerships with organizations that we feel very confident in, and one of those is Gaggle. When we moved our student data into the cloud and started using Google Apps for Education and Google Apps for Education email, cloud storage with both our Microsoft Office 365 and our Google Apps for Education, one of the questions that our parents presented was, how will you be able to monitor this content? How will you be able to ensure us that students aren't bullying each other or are writing inappropriate emails, that they're not receiving inappropriate emails? And that's when we partnered with Gaggle. And Gaggle does filter all of our student emails, and it also scans both our Google Drives and our OneDrive. We've come across several valuable resources as we've undergone this process, and one of them is the site that includes all the signatories for the Student Privacy Pledge. We always go there to see if the company has signed on to the pledge. That's not a 100% guarantee, but it is certainly a first step. We also use the Privacy Technical Assistance Center. We used a lot of their videos in our professional development for our staff. And then we also use the 10 Principles to Guide the Use and Protection of Student Data that was recently completed with several organizations in partnership with COSIN. If you'd like to contact me about any of the things that I've mentioned, this is my contact information. I always answer my emails within about 24 hours, so please feel free to contact me if I can help in any way.
Thank you so much, Donna. We do have a couple of questions, and just want to follow up with you about who exactly was involved in creating that data governance policy you talked about.
Well, the first thing that we did was to form a data governance committee, and then we started working on the data governance policy. Then we had our school attorney review it. We had our State Department of Education attorney review it. We looked at a lot of different policies together. So that's how we basically got started.
Great. And how do you ensure that students' privacy is protected with all of these new apps and software and digital tools that you're using?
Well, I think the first thing is to make sure that you limit the amount of data that you put in there. And one of the things that we tell our teachers is that there is no such thing as a free online application. Someone is trying to make money in some form or fashion. And so we ask them to limit it or to use things like Student 1, 2, and 3, or at a minimum, we talk to them about the aggregation of the data and how that can build a student profile. So we talk about it's not just a first name or first initial and last name, it's how that data can be aggregated. And we go by the premise, can a reasonable person determine who the student is? If it's a paid product, then we start looking at, we allow a lot more data. If it's a paid product where we have a contract, and we put several more measures in place.
Great. Thank you so much, Donna. And I think now we will turn it over to Gary.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Adams. I'm the Tech Director of Palisades School District, a rural district in southeastern Pennsylvania. I'm also the sole proprietor of Stratus Tech LLC, where I help school districts implement Google Apps for Education and deploy Chromebooks. So now that my intro is out of the way, let's jump into the presentation. You can see here some of the core systems we've moved to the cloud, so things like our student information system and our personnel, payroll, and financial systems have all been moved to software as a service providers. In addition to this list, we also have Office 365 accounts set up for both staff and students. And the main reason for Office 365 for us is to provide access to the cloud versions of Microsoft Office on our Chromebooks and on student BYOD devices. We also, much like Mountain Brook, use quite a few free online resources. We vet those resources by having teachers communicate with me what sites they might be looking to use, and I then work with our solicitor to check the site's privacy policies for anything that might throw up a red flag for how they may or may not use the student data that's uploaded to them. A couple school districts in our county have also compiled a list of vendors and sites that either the tech director or the solicitor has gone through and checked the site's privacy policy for those same red flags. We, again like Mountain Brook, also look at the vendors who have taken the student privacy policy pledge and try to steer teachers towards using their products or towards using the sites that have already been vetted by other local districts and solicitors. So these are some of the more core services that we're looking to move to the cloud, and you'll take notice to the Health Suite system, which contains some pretty sensitive information that if we end up moving this data to the cloud, we need to really be careful of the vendor we choose. Same with cafeteria point of sale, so that takes care of some financial data with students paying for lunch. Even backup systems can contain sensitive data that we need to make sure that we vet the vendors that we're looking to deal with. So you can see here some of the reasons we moved data to the cloud and continue to do so. Internet has become a commodity item that's constantly dropping in price, especially when purchased in bulk through a consortium like we have. We went from 100 megabits last year to 500 megabits, and the spare bandwidth is available in our consortium should we decide we need more in the next couple of years. Another advantage to moving systems and data to the cloud is that it frees up IT resources, much like Donna mentioned, to do more important things like actually have time to proactively check the network and be sure it's operating efficiently and it is secure. That's something that when you're having to manage all these other things like backups, server security, server hardware upgrades, that sometimes gets put on the back burner and you end up having to be reactive when problems occur. Pushing data to the cloud also provides for anytime, anywhere access to information from pretty much any device, since the majority of these products are web-based. Also, again like Donna, if disaster falls on your data center to the point where you can't access any of those services it provides, then hosting your systems in the cloud can be a big advantage to be able to access the student and staff data or to be able to run payroll, for instance. So when you're choosing partners to host your data in the cloud, I recommend to choose wisely. Make sure their policies are compliant with FERPA. If possible, request the vendor's backup and disaster recovery plans. Try to choose well-established partners rather than maybe a startup company for your most sensitive information. Get references if possible and actually contact those references to find out about their experience. Do a total cost of ownership evaluation. So check whether it's more cost-effective to host the data in-house or move it to the cloud, but take things like disaster recovery, backups, and constant hardware upgrades cycle into consideration. Also determine what critical systems would be most beneficial to have available in the event your data center no longer exists, and consider moving those systems to the cloud. So I'd like to thank EdScoop for providing me with the opportunity to share with you today. My contact info is on the next slide. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask or through the chat screen or shoot me off an email offline. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Gary. And before we get to some questions, I just want to have the audience know that they can feel free to submit their own questions in the chat box. And we'll start off with, what steps did either of you take deciding how to explain to parents about moving school data to the cloud? Did you communicate that through email, on the school website, in person? Did you have a meeting about this?
We did it at Back to School nights. So we have tech leader teachers at each of our buildings that held sessions at Back to School nights for parents that had questions about moving data to the cloud.
We've done it at most of our parent meetings. We put a lot of things on the web, and we publish, like I said, our data privacy policy. We talk. We also have our teachers do a lot of the communicating with parents, because that's we try to make sure that they are very informed of the process, because parents trust their child's teachers. We also work through our PTOs. We usually vet everything that we do through our PTO council, and so that way we get a little bit of a bird's eye view of what to expect. But our parents, they want easy access. But the E-Days, I have to say that when we started E-Days, it really helped parents to understand the benefit of being able to access information from home or from the library or from wherever that their child might be. So that little starting process helped us move that ball down the road much quicker than it would have if we had not had an immediate need.
And Donna, can you talk a little bit about how the transition went for teachers? Was this an easy transition for them when it came to looking up their own information, their students' information?
I don't think it's been a really difficult transition for our teachers, only because, like I said, we've done teacher training. Our teachers have access to a lot of technologies. They're all on the curriculum committees, and on those curriculum committees we're always looking for resources. They're the ones that are driving the online textbooks. They're the ones that are going to be on the new committee while we look at changing our LMS. They're represented on our web page committees, which so they understand the process and the need to have online data. So I don't think it's been a hard transition for them at all. For them, it's a link. I mean, it's not. They don't care if it's in the cloud or if it's on a local server. Now, there's been a lot more transition for them to learn to teach online than it is to transition to products online.
Great. Gary, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add is that, with a limited school district budget, it's a lot more difficult to secure systems than it would be if you're a big vendor like Google, for instance. I mean, they have billions of dollars to secure their systems. Most of these other vendors also have, pretty much unlimited budgets to be able to secure their systems, where I, as a tech director in a school district, have a very limited budget on, purchasing hardware to secure my systems. So that's another reason why we've moved stuff to the cloud.
And we have a question. Which cloud service provider did each of you choose?
We use many. Go ahead, Donna.
No, you go ahead.
We use Google Apps for Education throughout the district. That's one of our main providers of cloud services. But, we use many other services too. We use Office 365, for instance, but I would say Google Apps for Education is our primary provider, but then, within that Google Apps for Education realm, there are other third-party providers within that as well that provide apps for Google Apps, apps for Chromebooks, so we make use of multiple products.
And I think that, I know Gary has talked about Chromebooks. That's another thing. As our instruction, kept pushing the need for more and more access, and I mean device access and content access. If you go to something like a Chromebook, then you're going to have to go to web-based, or cloud-based applications. And so I think that was one thing. But as far as some of the vendors, we've also run our own private cloud for a long time, but we look at each application, and, we always start with the question, will it solve a problem or will it make something better? And so we use InfoSnap for our online registration. We use Google Apps for Education. We use Office 365. If you go with a textbook company, we don't look at we look at the content first when selecting a textbook, and then look at what their online resources are. And I will say that in the last 3 or 4 years, the teachers are driving. If they're looking at 2 different textbooks, they certainly look at what is available online when making their choices. But all of our providers, you can see them on that web page of the online resources that we use.
Thank you both. We do have a question from William. How difficult was it to fund both of your initiatives?
It saved money.
Yeah, really, in a nutshell, you do the total cost of ownership analysis, and in the long run, not having to do hardware upgrades, like I mentioned before, and having to take care of backups and doing backup upgrades for your backup servers, adding drive space. I think the total cost of ownership over the long run is less than housing it in-house.
I would like to add something there. When I was showing my superintendent and my board, as we started to do this, a lot of times you have to take it out over multiple years to show that total cost of ownership. A lot of people try to do a one-year snapshot. Well, you're not buying servers that year, or you just bought storage. So you really have to look at it over about a 5-year period, and then you really start seeing the cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Linda. Suppose households do not have computers. What happens then?
Well, what we've done is we let people we save older technologies, and they can check those out. We survey our families every year to find out if they have home devices. We've just started a technology bundle. We don't say a one-to-one for our high school, where we've gone to leasing. We're leasing Chromebooks, and we actually have done a partnership with parents, the community, and the school system to fund those leases over 3 years. And then we're very lucky in that our city recently did a very inexpensive, actually. School systems certainly couldn't do it this inexpensive. They made all of our communities, the city part, the little small retail areas, and the athletic fields, they added Wi-Fi to all of the community athletic fields. And then we also partner with our businesses and our library for access.
Great.
And our Palisades, we're just going through a comprehensive plan right now, and part of that comprehensive plan is to open our school buildings like several nights in a week, so that students can come to our school buildings if they don't have computer access at home. Another thing we're looking at is there's a company called Kajit that makes Wi-Fi hotspots that students could check out from the library and take home. So that's another solution we're looking at. We're also looking at partnering with community centers throughout our district. We're a 100-square-mile school district, so we're pretty spread out, so it's a little difficult for people to get to our core school district center here in Kintnersville, but they can usually get to the outside schools, like in one of our elementary schools out at one of the outsides of the district. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to provide access for parents that don't have access at home.
Thank you. And a question from Sarah. Are there disadvantages to going with established companies over startups?
I personally would go with an established company for data that is sensitive data, like things like your student information system. You wouldn't want to go with a fly-by-night company that's going to be here today and gone tomorrow, and then you're stuck with migrating data to somebody else.
Hurts your TCO.
What's that?
Which hurts your TCO if you have to
Right.
constantly be moving your data.
Right.
I know both of you said that these initiatives saved money, but we have a question from William asking, do you see E-rate as a source of funding for this technology?
E-rate, supplants your internet connectivity, of course, and it also now supplants some of your wireless infrastructure costs. So that helps with the ability to provide high bandwidth to your school district. So E-rate is, it does help with that situation.
And was Amazon, sorry, Donna, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying that bandwidth is the key. How much bandwidth you have, determines, how you can go to the cloud. And of course, one of the things that we haven't mentioned is if you're going to use cloud computing, it certainly helps if you have, Wi-Fi in your buildings so that you can use the less expensive devices. and we've done online assessments. Alabama is one of the few states that instead of using Greater Balance or PARCA or whatever part, we have the ACT suite. So all of our online testing is available, through the cloud, and that's just, so you have to get that infrastructure in place really so that you can buy those less expensive devices to really start seeing the benefits to me for that anytime, anywhere access.
And we have a question from Mike who wants to know, was Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure used or considered?
Yes. For me, one of the main things that we did there, was when we were looking at our cloud backup solution, we looked at Amazon, we looked at Microsoft Azure, and of course, and then we looked at the Dell Cloud, and we looked at the cost per gigabyte, and then we looked at the software cost, and we will be reevaluating that this year.
We did not look at Amazon. We looked at Microsoft early on, actually before it was even Office 365. We looked at Microsoft when it was, I think it was Microsoft.edu or something like that. We actually moved to that prior to moving to Google Drive or Google for Apps for Education. But we ended up moving to Google Apps for Education just simply because the integration with Active Directory was honestly easier, which kind of doesn't make sense because it's Microsoft as compared to Google. But the Active Directory integration ended up being easier for us, so that's why we moved to Google. And we're also moving to Google Drive for a lot of our, our file server storage needs, rather than having to buy disk space for our file servers in-house.
I will say that Azure is very secure. I know our student management system we have a state-mandated student management system, and there is an option to move that to the cloud. And we have not done that yet simply because we had just bought some virtual servers for our student management system. So for us, it was not timely to move to that. But I know they've been very pleased with that as a place to store the statewide student management system.
Okay, great. We have a question from Tim who asks whether the Microsoft Productivity Suite and storage can be used for collaboration with students and with parents as well.
It can be, but it's not quite as robust as Google Suite is with collaboration. You can be editing a Word document at the same time in the cloud-based version of Word, but it's not nearly as fluid as editing a Google Doc simultaneously.
I would agree. I think it will be. I know we have just recently started using the OneNote Classroom with some secondary students, and some of the new products like Office Mix, and then they have video storage. But that easy opening up a document and collaborating, the Office 365 tends to want to open up the Office, to get all the features, tends to want to open up the Office client on the machine. But we certainly, and it's funny because we actually have our students are able to, everything is tied to Active Directory for the techies out there. So our students' Google account is tied to their Active Directory account, and our students actually log into Office 365 with their Google email account.
Wonderful. And we have a question. Do you have a preference to use SaaS applications or purchasing the software and hosting it yourself, whether in a cloud or locally?
We've used SaaS products for our Pearson Power School, which is no longer Pearson, so it's just Power School. But anyway, we've used software as a service for our financial systems as well and our personnel and payroll systems. So they're basically companies that are actually fairly local to us that are hosting these software as a service systems.
I tried not to buy any. Well, first of all, most software companies that are are fairly progressive. No one is really selling their software anymore. Most of them are leasing it, so you're paying a licensing fee every year, even if you're hosting it yourself or if you're using it in the cloud. The difference then becomes if it's hosted on their site, then they're paying per gig to back it up, and they're paying their technical support people to update it, whereas if I'm hosting it, I'm paying for the hardware, I'm paying for the support, and a lot of your cloud-based products now actually have support where the parents and the students can contact the support directly. So, if I can have it hosted, I have it hosted. But I always
Donna and Gary, sorry, Donna, go ahead.
I just always evaluate, just like Gary said, looking at the cost of doing it either way.
Mm-hmm.
Can both of you sort of speak to how much cost savings that your districts both had by migrating the data to the cloud? And was it hard at all to get your administrators on board, and how did you persuade them if so?
Right. Well, Google Apps for Education is free, so is Office 365, so that's kind of a no-brainer on that end. And we've been slowly migrating our file storage data to Google Drive. So, free beats anything we'd have to pay for in-house. Again, it's more secure than I could ever make it in-house. Total cost of ownership for PowerSchool, we were kind of forced to move to PowerSchool because our existing SIS vendor went belly up and sold off to PowerSchool, so we had to move to PowerSchool. And we made the decision at that point to just move to the hosted version of PowerSchool rather than trying to host it in-house and having to pay for the server, the new server infrastructure, and everything we'd have to put into place to be able to host it in-house. So I don't have a specific dollar amount, but it was definitely a savings from hosting it in-house and having to pay for maintenance agreements on servers, having to pay for storage space, having to pay for virtual host servers, and all the above, basically, backup systems. So,
for us, it really, we showed the savings because I have to turn in a very comprehensive budget every year, and the budget's been flat for about the last 5 years. But again, for us, it was the instruction and the need of the school system that pushed us to cloud computing. It wasn't me pushing them. Obviously, I was thrilled because it freed up some funds that allowed us to do some other things. But, as our school system wanted to implement E-Days, as they wanted to do more blended learning, as our teachers wanted to do, more information in a learning management system, online assessments, you can't do that unless it's cloud computing, unless you host your own kind of private cloud, which we did for 5 years. But then they're logging into our local network, and then that's another set of security issues. So it was the need and the direction that the school system wanted to go that really pushed us into cloud computing.
Yeah, I have to agree with Donna. Like, our teachers are kind of pushing this initiative as well, moving data to the cloud and moving systems of the cloud that they want to use in the classroom. They're constantly looking for new resources, and we're having to vet a lot of resources constantly. So it's really the teachers and actually the student and parents that are driving this initiative.
Okay, we have a question from Mike. Do you use any open source technologies?
I use some open source technologies. I actually have a Moodle server hosted in-house. We aren't using that very extensively now, also because how much Google Classroom has taken off in our district. But I also, at one point, was using an open source firewall in our district. We had toyed with the possible use of LibreOffice or OpenOffice at one point. We ended up, moving to Google Drive and Google Docs, and that kind of took the place of that philosophy. So We aren't using as much open source as we used to, but we're still using some of it in the district.
Donna, what about you?
The only open source that we use is some open source textbooks. To use open source, you've got to dedicate some technical expertise there, and our network admin and myself and our techs and the people that we have in-house to do that, we just really don't have the time. We did Moodle rooms, Moodle for a long time, and really then went to Moodle rooms because of the fact that we just didn't have the staff on site to do the technical work in addition to everything else that we are doing. So the only open source we have today is a couple of open source textbooks.
Great, thank you. And what's one thing you wish cloud service providers would do more or better for school districts like yours?
I wish they would make it easier for us to vet their privacy policies. Put them in English instead of legalese. I think it would make it easier on school districts. Maybe more vendors to sign the privacy pledge as well. So,
I would agree 100%. The biggest thing that's taking up so much time for us right now is just trying to vet those products and understand their privacy agreement, and if they at least sign on to the pledge, then the things that we're looking for, they've at least said they're going to do, and that at least gives us something to start with.
Have you run into any issues concerning privacy with any of these vendors or companies? And also, on the flip side, do you run into any problems with state policies that are already in effect?
When you say state policies?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, state privacy policies.
Okay. Go ahead.
We have not in Pennsylvania. Actually, one system that does kind of concern me, though, is our Pennsylvania Student Information System, which is called PIMS. Basically, it's hosted by a third-party vendor. I have not had to change my password in the last 8 years since it's been in place. So I have concerns actually about their privacy policy for the system that they're using for our student information that we send up to them.
We really don't. Go ahead.
Sorry, are you going to be able to do anything about that? Will you confront them about their privacy policy?
I will be confronting them. I will be bringing this up with our school board as well, so that maybe they can put pressure on the state to actually maybe have us provided with some sort of privacy policy for this third-party vendor that's hosting this data, because it's a lot of sensitive data that we push out to the state almost on a monthly basis that we have no idea, how secure that system is or what's going on with that system. So,
go ahead, Donna. Sorry about that.
I really have a lot of confidence in our state in that area because they are pushing that every school district in the state have a data privacy policy. They initiate the memorandum of agreement with all of the cloud-based products that they supply for school districts. Our data is sent to them for a lot of state reporting, but I know where it's housed. They're fairly transparent about that. And I'm a little bit fortunate in that I've actually worked with them on some of the data privacy issues around the state. So I'm pretty comfortable with that, with the state issues. We have run across some very interesting free software that teachers have submitted where we've basically declined them, and generally it's because either A, the software vendor doesn't have a U.S. presence and all the data is stored in another country. We had one where, as we did research, there were no adults involved, and they were about to let students put a lot of data out on a program that was basically run by a group of students. I think the last one that I had an issue with is I actually called the company and I said, could I have a copy of your data privacy policy? And they said, we don't have one. So that was definitely a flag. So we do look carefully.
Right. That's not a good sign.
No.
I want to ask our guests if you have anything else to add. Okay, well, I want to thank our audience once again for tuning in today to EdScoop's Education Technology webinar series. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Metalogix for sponsoring today's program. Don't forget, you can download the slides from today's presentation by clicking the resource widget, a green folder at the bottom of your screen. And just a reminder, our program today will be available on demand approximately 1 day after the webcast and remain available for up to 90 days. You can access it and download a PDF copy of the slides from the resource list on the console using the same audience link that was emailed to you earlier. Please invite your colleagues to tune in. It's free. All they need to do is fill in a brief registration card to view the entire program and also get the slides. On behalf of us at EdScoop, this is your host, Corinne Lesh. Thanks again for being with us.